time. Frank Ewert.
Yes, thanks, Michael, for your presentation. Very interesting. I try to make sense of your conclusion, try to understand what you actually wanted to say from the context of the topic of your presentation. And my translation was that the land sharing sparing concept is perhaps an oversimplification, which doesn't really help in the present, let's say, debate and also development in which we are in order to address the challenges that we are facing. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much context-specific situations, and there's no simple rule of put one development in the one or the other corner.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. However, when you see people in public discourse, they either sit in this camp or the other camp, and this makes then so many discussions unproductive, because the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's better to at least this is my observation. Once you break down and say, you made your ideological speech now. Now let's go into a concrete landscape, and what would you do there? Then you actually get exactly these nuances of where you would actually converge and get to some agreement what you would do in a concrete landscape. So of course, we humans, we live with simplifications, and journalism lives from the black and whites, and so I think we need to learn in public discourses to bring in these nuances, and not position yourself in one or the other camp.
I see there's another hand up, then I spare my next question because I had another one.
Please go ahead, Frank, and then we have the other one. That's fine.
Okay, that's somehow related to that. So if we are in the middle, this is also, of course, very vague. I understand what you mean. But in terms of guiding research, you said there is evidence-based information needed in order to sort of implement this middle of the road view. Could you perhaps be a bit more specific and give some, priorities to research that we need urgently in that context? Because there are lots of issues to be addressed, and we have 60 scientists here in the meeting roughly. So what should they take home? What would you advise?
I think one research I would really like to see is how do we get still high yields, but with more biological measures, both on the nutrient side, but then also even more so on the plant protection side, and actually use then all of these new technologies, starting from eDNA, metabolomics, and so forth, to better understand how can we do still the high yields, but in a much more sustainable, more ecological way. And then what I think is coming now more and more, and I mentioned this before, is all of this microbiome research, where you actually see that the way how food is currently evaluated in terms of its health effects misses out on some of this very modern dimension of health, and much of it has to do with microbiology. And linking up the microbiology of humans, landscapes, and the agricultural fields all the way to the soil is definitely something that has great potential to revolutionize how we actually will do and implement agricultural practices, and even invent new ones.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. Maybe the very last one is kind of the interaction between the surrounding landscape elements and the field. I think that's also a
landscape structures.
Landscape structures and how does this biology work? And now with our computational means, we can actually start to do this.
Yeah.
Things we could not measure before and not compute before or analyze, we have now the capabilities to do this. And this opens up a huge area of research.
Yeah. So that's a good bridge to my colleague who has a hand up, Masahiro Rio, as a data scientist. Thanks very much, Michael.
So please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your great talk. I learned like this kind of discussion from biodiversity science, where there was a big debate if we should conserve single large or several small habitats. And I also thought recently about photovoltaics. If we put a single huge area for photovoltaics, or if we should have tiny small ones everywhere. So that I think this kind of argument is really generic for any environmental science in terms of resource allocation in space, and also like related to transportation of resource distribution. I think another key is the interaction with surrounding different environments, right? So I was quite inspired by this point, just to give like general feedback. And as a data scientist, I'm also using deep learning, machine learning. And I'm also thinking presently, the way to use machine learning is, as you showed, like model surrogate, how to extract information from mechanistic models to simplify and computationally make it faster, so that we can compare many different scenarios at once. And maybe it's easier to combine different models like climate models, groundwater models, agricultural models in a single set using machine learning. So I thought like I am really looking forward to seeing you in person when you come to ZALF.
Yep.
Then discuss about this point.
Okay. Very, very quickly. So on the biodiversity side, there is a colleague in Cambridge, Andrew Bamford. He's a very outspoken advocate of land sparing, in the sense that, you know, do very high yield farming, and then the spared land you try to rewild, and he has shown evidence that this overall increases biodiversity. This is highly contested, but currently, at least he's the one who puts most evidence forward on this one result. So that's currently where the discussion is, and I think he should be contested as much as possible. So please, let's generate counter examples. On the PV side, that's quite interesting. This is also coming more and more, but in two ways to my mind. One is, you know, you do silico agro systems, you know, where you have the solar panels and you have grazing underneath, or you could also in the shade produce certain legumes and so forth. That's one thing. So that's agroforestry, if you want, with solar panels. What's quite interesting is and I mentioned this shortly, this protein from air, where you have you produce hydrogen from PV, and then you produce proteins. And when you look at the life cycle analysis of these systems, they outcompete grazing by an order of magnitude, or even two. So here you really have completely new efficiencies for protein production. And some of the protein production, I looked into it a little bit, is equivalent to, you know, the powder that bodybuilders take. So it's also for human consumption, or you can feed it to animals and you eat the animals then. So it goes both ways. What I do see is there is a lot happening. So, for example, US military, DARPA, you know, the funding organization for civil research as well, but for military purposes, they are heavily investing in this, and there are many startup companies and some of the, you know, super rich people who want to save the world actually put their money into these kind of technologies because they believe in land sparing through these radically new technologies. And again, also these kind of technologies we can do now also because we have the computational capacity to engineer these microbes in such a way that they eat the hydrogen and so forth, bring this to industrial scale. So here this is another benefit of our computational capabilities. To your last one, yes, we are currently using machine learning mostly for emulators of crop models, but also for data assimilation of other data streams like agricultural field trials and so forth, where you have then additional bias. What we are also doing is we use reinforcement learning quite a lot these days for stakeholder coordination in order to try to see how can we make this transition, which I was discussing, how can we, with machine learning and with reinforcement learning on the one hand, create positive feedbacks for those who are successful producers, and with others, find ways to actually see whether they can find some other niches or whether they find other opportunities. So this is more for human collective intelligence building. And these are really interesting things. There are not many people working on this globally at the moment. So happy to discuss some more.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I think you should have a follow-up discussion.
Definitely,
That's
yes.
really nice. Yeah, it's good to have this match here, I would say. Yes. Is there any other question also from the audience? Is there anybody who would like to pose some questions? No, I have then a question to you, Michael. I was just wondering, I really like this maximum yield and the targeted land sparing scenario. I was wondering, because you mentioned at the very beginning the risk level, no? And the risk level, of course, risk comes with costs, of course. And if you would say this targeted or maximum yield scenario, you would have a concentration of unfavorable land in per se. Would it mean in the light of the climate change, does it mean that also the risk and also the costs may rise because of climate change? That I was wondering a bit here.
Yeah. So what we did is we overlaid these concentrated breadbasket, so to say, with the climate scenarios that are currently existing. And as you know, the climate scenarios, they're not crazy enough. So and even we used some of the more extreme ones. And it looks like that the concentration to the better areas is actually taking out volatility of the system. So you would see overall lower prices, but also lower price volatility if you want to. And of course, overall less production outages. However, this is a little bit like forest fire management. When you put out many small little fires, you increase still the probability that you get a very large fire, simply because you have more biomass accumulated. And here it's the same, well, similar thing is if the climate models are not good enough and you have really, you know, large scale weather patterns, let's say large scale droughts over these concentrated breadbaskets, then this would have a much more massive effect. Rather than a more distributed system. So here, I think there is currently we have not evidence for one or the other, but the risk of very large outages is definitely larger when you concentrate.
Yeah, okay. And there's another question, Jonathan. Are you there, Jonathan Hagan? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, some technical issues. Yeah. So just a quick one, just to follow up on Stefan's question, but to go a little bit beyond that, to from the national or like global scale to much more continental base. So then my question is, looking at land sparing and land sharing, does that necessarily go to the extent of exacerbating existing unequal structures that are in place? For instance, if the models are run and then we have, for instance, let's say some regions that are better at producing certain crops, and then we just oppose that with some trade models, and then trade is going on. You take some sub-regions like, let's say, Sub-Saharan Africa, where in terms of exchange rates and stuff like that, in terms of trade, are unequally yoked in the global market. Does it not affect it unequally? And then by so doing, then it's like re-echoes some of the social problems that you mentioned earlier in the presentation, where agriculture is linked with poverty, low livelihoods and stuff like that. Does it not, you know, create more push into that space? No, for sure. It's if you know, this is what we did were very artificial calculations. So this was just doing this black and white picture. But what you would see if I just look at the cost data and say cost competitiveness is a predictor, this would actually go then into the direction where quite many landscapes would actually be not competitive anymore, and they would be outcompeted by others, and so here the economic machinery would create definitely more inequalities on a global level. This would be unavoidable, absolutely. Weakly related to this, we just entered a collaborative work with TNC, the Nature Conservancy, where we are trying to motivate kind of this land sparing, land sharing on landscapes. And in the first step, we did a global foodscapes report, which you could also look at, where we just define foodscapes. And then in foodscapes, those would become kind of the planning units for kind of integrated landscape management actions, including this land sparing, because there, what the idea would be is that actors within the landscape could actually make exchanges. You know, I give up my farm and I do rewilding with some, let's say, international money, and you produce more.
Okay.
And so here it's the question is also what's the best geographic unit where you can actually get sensible landscape deals. And I think it's something, it must be on the landscape level. It's not, you know, of course you have then international transfers, that's a little separate, but most likely it's for these deals, it must be subnational. and speak to the biophysical realities.
Yeah. Is there in this regard also a question? What I understood now, because there's nobody right now, it's what I understood is that also if you have the scenarios, you even said that the ecosystem services would be even higher in this sparing scenario, no? And if we think about this, and exactly with this, what you said is the distribution in the landscape might be really have a tremendous effect also where you have the patches, no? Of the habitats might have a tremendous effect on, I just say, biodiversity or whatever service it is now. And this is that you did not now have different scenarios, and you tried also to simulate those scenarios. That was not your task, or are you trying to do this as well?
No, we're definitely looking into fragmental landscapes for biodiversity restoration. So basically these corridors.
Yes.
We're looking into this, and the other thing which we started is for Brazil. We looked into the regional and local climate attenuation effect of nearby forests.
Okay.
Where you actually see that standing forests have quite tremendous potential impact on long-term yields, simply because of this climate attenuation effect. It's basically more moisture and lower temperatures.
Yeah. And this, if you have corridors, for example, and then the impact on biodiversity, is this a gross estimation, or do you have then national, local, I would say, results on exactly these causal chains? And this is what we are also discussing at ZALF a lot, no? Yeah.
We are currently building the global computational infrastructure, also because there is a lot of global information out there, and even the local predictions on birds and so forth become better when you have more information. So that's a colleague here in Oxford, and then, as I said at the very beginning, we have this Nature Recovery Center where we also go then into, so we have up in Scotland, here in Oxfordshire, but then also in Ghana and so forth, other places where we'll actually try to test these things out in real life, not only global stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Is there any other question? Also, I think we are in just to give you a feedback, we were 65 people in the audience, and that is really something. It is also for us extraordinary in terms of feedback, that there was a really high interest, no? And this is a very good feedback I can give you here.
Okay.
Is there any final, would you say also audience now, I just approach you directly, do you have any final question? Not at the moment. Then I would say, Michael, that was really great, and I think we have to think a bit about the bigger picture, what you said, because you gave us a lot to think about right now, because also in terms of costs and also in terms of your scenarios, what you gave to us, this global view, that's very interesting. And I think that we have also at a working group, at least interest, but also hopefully at a ZALF level, that we have really high interest to collaborate further. And I think that was really great. And I personally thank you very much that you have really spent your time now together with us in this this time, and that we also have follow-up activities, of course.
Yes.
I would say thank you. If you have also something to say, just let me know as a final remark. Otherwise, we will also hopefully meet soon again.
Yes. Well, thank you, Stefan. It was a big pleasure, and I hope physically in 3D we will see each other very soon to discuss some of like the machine learning issue came up, but many other issues which we discussed already, and some of the staff exchange which we are embarking on. So let's intensify our collaboration, because as I said in my final statement, we need to do more research in order to have a better world.
Great. That's really, really great. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Thank
and
you.
there will be for sure a lot of follow-up activities.
Okay.
Great. Yes. If you want to chat, or if you have like a deep dive, if you would like to chat further, please go ahead. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Wenn du willst, können wir noch 2 Minuten. Thank you very much, and I say goodbye to everybody. Wenn du willst, können wir noch 2 Minuten sprechen über.
Ja.
Ja, super. Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank. Ja. Gut. Wir haben ja jetzt noch, genau, also ganz konkret, wir können da noch 2, 3 Sekunden warten, ganz konkret. Genau, wäre es, ich habe ja bislang besprochen, dass wir Shibire würde dann nächstes Jahr zu euch kommen, und
Ja, genau.
das wäre so die eine große Aktivität, die wir im Sommer planen. Und das zweite wäre der Harrison mit der Publikation momentan, die ich dir gesendet habe. Siehst du da eine Möglichkeit, dass Harrison auch noch mal 2 Wochen zu euch kommt?
Sicher, sicher.